The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about achieving peak sales performance. It's a goal that all of us have as you build your sales competencies, both direct and through your channel partners. So we're going to focus on that today. And very specifically, we're going to talk about how do you unlock the sales potential and sales performance as we enter a new year. Now, if you're like me and you've hired hundreds, in cases, thousands of salespeople, what you realize is that regardless of the number, you always get what I call the ABCs. The A performers are extraordinary, and that's really all you want. The B performers are typically those that don't excel at the level that you like to achieve. They don't perform the way you want. And the C performers are those that you wish you probably wouldn't have hired. But one of the keys when you're running a sales organization or working with partners that are your distribution channel is to achieve the maximum sales performance that you can from every sales executive. And so we're going to be talking about that today because that's important. There's three keys you find when you're building great sales organizations and you're tuning them for performance. One is creating the right number of and quantity and quality of leads that they're going to need. And we've talked about that many times as you've come to these webinars with on-demand advisors. Another is giving them the right vehicles. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, a vehicle called OneSource. And then coaching. How do you coach for performance? So if you've got the right vehicles, how do you actually coach the Bs to be As, the Cs to be Bs and As, and then move them up that realm? And if you're like me, and you've been successful doing this, you really are just tickled pink when you're thinking about achieving your goals, scaling the organization, and building a great culture as a company. So as with any of our webinars that we do on a monthly basis, please feel free to post your questions in the chat area. We'll make sure that we address any questions that you have. And if we have too many questions, then we'll actually go offline and answer those questions for you. But we really appreciate your participation today and look forward to our discussions. One of the things that we created at On-Demand Advisors is this vehicle called OneSource. And OneSource is really an important way to think about this vehicle in terms of the peak sales performance that you want. Ultimately, you want one platform that is going to be your asset management, sales tools, and communication platform that you're going to use with all of your customers and your prospects. When you can do that and you can start aligning along the buyer's journey and the sales cycle that you have, you've got something very powerful in terms of onboarding your sales executives throughout the year, making sure that the sales team, including management, are all together on one page, and giving you really the capability to scale at unprecedented levels. So we're going to discuss that today as we go through that. But let's talk first about some of the challenges that we see in many sales and marketing organizations. And this is true of small companies, mid-sized companies, and public companies. Well, the first challenge, of course, is just lack of sales performance. As we talked about, when you look at A, Bs, and Cs, you can see how people are doing against their quota. And it's always a challenge when you look at underperformance and you're thinking, how do I coach for performance? How do I give them the right tools? How do I enable their success? And that's really what we're talking about today, because you want to have the right tools, but you don't want to have tools that aren't optimal. You don't want to invest in tools that aren't going to align and give you the results you're looking for. So we're very focused on having demonstrable tools. The second thing that we find, and you'll find this, as we're going to quote some of the analysts like Gartner and Forrester as we talk throughout today, is that up to 2/3 of a salesperson's time may be spent on non-sales activities. It's not unusual for sales executives to spend time putting together presentations, trying to find presentations, create success stories, put together proposals or quotes. All these things are necessary, but when you don't have them or they're not available to you, they take away the most important thing that you have going for yourself as a salesperson, and that is face-to-face selling time that you have with your buyer. The third area is onboarding new sales hires. As we are starting a new year, you're probably thinking about adding some additional sales resources. And the key with those resources isn't the orientation that happens up front. It's the ongoing training, coaching, and the tools that you're going to provide to that sales organization to actually help them make them successful. The key is to make sure that they don't flounder. The next is buyer engagement. Now, some of you may be selling to the mid-market. Some may be selling to large enterprise customers. The challenge in many cases is that when you're selling to a company, you're not just selling to a person. You may be selling to a project team. You may be selling to different departments. You may be selling to, for instance, one of our clients sells to government contractors. These are large companies like a Raytheon or a Blue Origin or a Boeing. And so they're going to be talking to a lot of people. And that's going to be across departments too. It may include purchasing, may include IT, may include organizations. So you really need vehicles to engage all of the buyers involved in that process. And then finally, one of the things that is truly challenging in many organizations is marketing and sales may not be aligned. So for instance, one of the analysts, and I believe this one is Forrester, stated that 90% of what gets created in marketing is not used by sales. To put it another way, when I met a CEO a number of years ago, he said to me, he said, Bob, we spend probably about $400,000 to $500,000 on marketing in total every year. If you could just help me understand how do I connect the dots between marketing spend and sales outcomes, that would really be helpful. And so we set out to help him do that. Now we're going to talk about OneSource. This is an important vehicle in terms of helping you achieve this. So some of the benefits that you're going to see when we demonstrate and show you OneSource today is gaining immediate access to the right tools. When I talk to many different business owners and CEOs, often I ask for different things that they want to share with me, like, how about the latest company presentation? How about the latest subscription agreement that you have for your services? How about the latest whatever success story? And they always struggle to go find that information somewhere in the bowels of their company. So what we want to do is talk about how do you put that information at your fingertips? Another thing is aligning with the sales process and the buying process. So we're all used to a sales process, which are the steps that we want to take somebody through. But the other side of the coin is the buying process. How does your buyer want to buy? What is the buying process? What are the steps that they want to go through? And how do you actually give them the tools, the knowledge, and the wherewithal to actually navigate through that buying process very quickly and enable that frictionless buying process? A third area that we're going to talk about is creating the collection, what we call collections for your buyer. So what could be a collection? I'll give you an example. If you are selling to different verticals, you may have a collection of information that's right for the healthcare market. You may have a collection of information that's right for financial services, and so forth. So you want to be able to group that information and share that information interactively with each of your different audiences. Another way to put a collection of information together is a trade show or a conference. You want to provide conference attendees maybe a overview of your services, your booth, where you're located at, some information around best practices that you're going to be talking about at a presentation during that conference, and some other assets that you have. So that would be a collection. A third example would be a launch. If you're launching a new product or a new service, you want to bring all that information together. You want to have the presentation, the overview, perhaps the promotion, the offers, and other information into a collection. And then finally, another example of a collection is meetings. If we're going to have a meeting tomorrow, I'd like to have an agenda. I'd like to have maybe a process infographic of what we're going to talk about. I want to have an overview presentation and some other assets. So you want intelligent ways to group information into what we call collections. The next area is sharing tailored information to your buyer. So if you have, like we talked about Raytheon, and you have 25 people that are involved in the evaluation process, you want to tailor the information specific to that 25 people, and you want to share that. Now, one of the things that is typically a problem when you have videos, you have PDFs, you have different formats of documents, is they don't get through the firewall. And if you send information to clients, not only is it messy, but oftentimes it doesn't get to your buyer. It doesn't get to the person that you want. So we're going to share with you how, with something called ShareView, how we enable you to provide that information seamlessly to them, personalized and tailored to their needs. And then finally, it's about performance. The way you do that is if you're going to create the tools and you're going to create the best practices at your company for sales performance, you want to be able to measure and improve that productivity on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So as you know, Craig Ramey and I founded On Demand Advisors a number of years ago. And we did it with the purpose as a revenue acceleration agency to help provide you with best practices on how to scale and grow your company and do that in the most predictable, capital efficient way possible. We had great success historically doing that. I was the CEO at Intact, and Craig was the CMO at Intact. And Intact is a software as a service company. And we scaled that company, thousands and thousands of clients that we brought aboard as a software as a service company, 300 sell-through partners, and we scaled the company, and it was extraordinary in terms of the outcomes. But ultimately, the Sage Group actually realized the value and acquired the company for $850 million. What we learned as we were scaling the company are the things that we're sharing with you today, and we've shared with many hundreds of B2B customers over the past 14 years. So in our demonstration today, we're going to share with you 5 aspects of OneSource, and Craig's going to walk you through a demonstration of the solution. The first that I want to talk about is something called advanced content filtering. So when you have content, you've got a lot of content. You've got to be able to navigate and access that content immediately. You also have to make sure it's based upon the latest change control rules that you have, so you're getting the latest version. The second thing that Craig is going to share with you is something called journeys. When you're working with a prospect or a buyer, there is a buyer's journey that they want to go through. When you're working with one of your customers, and perhaps it's a customer expansion opportunity, there is a customer journey that they want to go through. When you're working with partners, and partners such as sell-through partners like we had at Intact, there will be a partner journey that you want to take them through. So you want the ability to map and accelerate that journey. The thing that we talked about earlier is collections. Boost your effectiveness with collections based upon different criteria. Personalize your engagement with ShareView with your target audience, like we talked about with a company like Raytheon. And then measure effectiveness in use with analytics. Because at the end of the day, it's all about achieving results. And we're all about results, and I'm sure you are too. So with that, let me turn it over to Craig, and he's going to walk you through a demonstration of OneSource.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Bob, for that introduction. And I am going to project the solution now. So as Bob was indicating, he's had extensive experience as a sales executive and then ultimately as a CEO. So he's had both the opportunity to drive the strategy of the organization and then also drive the execution through sales. Now, my unique background when I'm bringing this equation is I've been a serial CMO. And so for the last 20 years, I've operated in that capacity, and Bob and I have been doing on-demand advisors for over a decade. And in that capacity, we have helped hundreds of software and services companies optimize their marketing and sales process. So the perspective that I'm bringing is that of a serial CMO. And let's take a step back, and Bob raised a number of excellent points. So let's take a step back and say, well, why are we doing this again? So ultimately, what we're trying to do is deploy your communication strategy and seamlessly execute it in your sales department to increase sales and revenue. I mean, that's ultimately why we're doing that. Now, in my experience working inside organizations and then advising organizations, what I have found is we create these amazing strategies. We create tools to support those strategies and put them in place with sales to execute. Invariably, the complexity and the human element get involved, and it becomes unwieldy for the organization as it grows to manage the correct flow and communication of those pieces of those sales tools to correctly communicate what needs to be communicated to improve the sales process and ultimately increase revenue. So hence, Bob and I created OneSource to help with that. So as Bob indicated, we're going to go through 5 areas of OneSource that are going to help with this. So the first section here we're going to talk about is content. So we're going to walk you through a real customer of ours, Visibility Software. So to set the stage, Visibility Software creates and sells a human resource software to nonprofit and government organizations, as well as some horizontal companies. Now, as you can see here with Visibility Software, they have 45 different sales tools, where I'm circling my cursor. They have 45 different sales tools that have been created, a myriad of ebooks, buyer's guides, ROI guides, overview videos, infographics, webinar demonstrations, just a myriad of very valuable sales tools to help communicate the value of what Visibility Software does in the marketplace. Not only 45 sales tools, but those sales tools are actually, some of them are broken down by vertical. So when an organization then attempts to scale, it's easy to train 1 or 2 or 3 salespeople, and they could be really good, and as Bob was indicating, to have those A players and some B players. But as an organization scales, it becomes very difficult to then communicate what needs to be done in a seamless fashion to communicate the message and ultimately increase revenue. So by using OneSource, and here's our 45 different sales tools, what we have done here is created a comprehensive library that only has the most current sales tools approved in it. Rather than it sitting on a hard drive where it has version A, version B, version C, these are only the approved sales tools. Not only that, everything is tagged appropriately. So for instance, perhaps we're looking for a buyer's guide, and we can quickly find our buyer's guide. Perhaps we're looking for something that's related to just a specific product. We can look at something that's just a specific product. Perhaps we want to look at something that's just for nonprofits. Now I can look at the nonprofits, and I can look at just the, say, specific tools that are related to that. So at that point, I can very quickly, as a sales rep and sales leader, I can guide the sales funnel to the most potent outcome of getting the information into the hands of the audience. Now, that's our content. So this is understandable. We can grab a link to it, we can send it immediately, it's all available to us. Now, the next piece of this, as Bob was indicating, is the section called the collections. Now, the collections are effectively a bundle of pieces of content. So this allows you to create really enhanced accessibility for the sales team. So let's say you have a team that's focused just on not-for-profit, where you could say, we have a whole bundle that is just focused on not-for-profit case studies. So you click it here, and all the case studies that have been approved by the organization are immediately accessible. Okay, so I have this now. So what Other ways could you do this? You could do this by partners. You could do this by, here's an example of the section that would be a bundle just for the partners. So again, as the marketing team and the strategic arm of the organization crafts the message and crafts it into these finely honed sales tools, they are deployed both in the content area and in the collections for usage. All right, so that's interesting. But now what do we do with this in engaging the audience? So that's what Bob was beginning to talk about earlier with, we have this concept of a shared view. So now we take these collections and we could create what are effectively these microsites. So I'm going to show you one of these. I'm going to show you how it's used. So let's go ahead and take a look at the not-for-profit success stories right here. We're going to look at this. So here's an example of taking those not-for-profit success stories and bundling them together in a collection and then deploying it in ShareView, which is effectively a microsite. So not only did we just, within minutes, take our content, put it into a bundle called a collection, but we also deployed it onto a microsite. So now you can take this, and if you're in, let's talk about an example. So let's say you're in a virtual meeting with a nonprofit executive using the example of visibility software. And Dale here, whose picture is shown, he's selling to this nonprofit executive. And he's discussing the benefits of the HR solution. And during the conversation, certain examples were discussed and so forth. Dale can quickly send a link to his ShareView, which has a myriad of examples. So not only does, in the meeting, do they have real-time interaction and it gets around the firewall issue which most companies, larger organizations, are ratcheting down even more today. Which it gets around the firewall issue because there's only a link, and the link goes to the ShareView microsite. But now Dale has provided a vehicle that could be shared. It's been shared with that executive, but the executive now can take that link and share it amongst other executives within the organization. So perhaps he or she needs to get buy-in from other individuals within the organization so they can send that one single link along and they have access to that one ShareView. Not only that, all that interaction with the ShareView is tracked and monitored inside of OneSource. So you can see who was looking at it, how many times was it shared, how many times was it open. So it offers advantages well beyond just that immediate interaction. So let's take a look at another example of ShareView. Let's say that we'll use Dale as our example again. There's going to be a conference coming up for not-for-profits. And Dale has a list of 50 different individuals he'd like to set up meetings with at this. So he does a pre-conference bundle and creates a ShareView. So then Dale sends out an introductory message to the individuals who are going to be at the conference saying, you know, I'd like to set up some meetings with you, and there's some information I'd like to discuss, and here's a preview of it. So Dale begins to use ShareView as a pre-sales type of engagement with the audience. So that will give you an example of just two very powerful ways of using the content to bundle in collections and then deploy as a ShareView. So now, and you can bundle these in any way you want, and the marketing organization should work with, as a marketing executive, a marketing organization should work with the sales leadership to create these bundles for the sales team. Because if we step back to what we're trying to do is we're trying to deploy that communication strategy in a seamless way. So if we take the guesswork, if our job is to make it easy, our job, if something goes wrong in the sales department, they're using it wrong, well, that's on us. So our job is to take that away and make it easy for them to use. So as we go further, there's another concept that we've built in here, and that's called the concept of the journey. The concept of the journey is such that any one of the collections can be attached to a predetermined journey. The journey is up to you to determine. And we can advise you on best practices for journeys, but I'm going to give you an example here of a nonprofit vertical here. That's what we're going to be showing. We've got 3 journeys. This nonprofit vertical is shown in these different stages of the sales funnel. So now it's not about just having the content that we have presented to the sales team to say, you are to sell to nonprofit. You are to take these tools and you are to educate the audience and to increase sales. Our job is to tell them which stage that sales tool was created for and how, in fact, to use it. So within it, let's look at the very first stage, which is in this example, sales qualify. We have instructions for the sales team here, description as to what it is, but also the approved piece of content that they should be using in that particular stage. We go to the next stage. There is a description of what the sales develop stage is, the instructions for it, as well as all the approved content that you could use in that particular interaction with the audience when they're in that stage. So as you can see, what we're trying to do with OneSource is accelerate ultimately that sales cycle to improve the opportunities as they get through from when they first become engaged with the sales department to ultimately when they become an actual customer. So our job in marketing is to help do that. So the last piece I want to talk about, now that we've gone through our content section, our collections,
Hey, Craig.
our share reviews. Yes, Bob.
Just one thing, before you leave journeys, is, and this is important, if we could. This is what Craig just showed you is a journey for selling new prospects, new buyers. There's also, when we work with clients, you're setting up journeys for upsell, cross-sell, which is what we call customer expansion. So, for instance, we have one client that has over 900 installations. And so providing that a separate journey for how their sales organization is going to engage their customers and their account managers are going to work with their customers is a different journey. And then we have another client that is using this journey for their partners, distribution partners, VARs, resellers. And in their case, it's about enabling those VARs to actually execute their sales cycle, but give them the tools and the knowledge that they're going to need to be able to represent their solutions. So thank you for letting me share that too.
No, that's an excellent point, Bob. In fact, as you take Bob's examples there, you could begin to apply it to your own instance, and you could begin to think about the different verticals you have. You have different, let's just say you have 3 different verticals. Okay, you have 3 different verticals for new customers. And to Bob's point, you've got a customer and upsell program that probably needs to have its own journey. Then you're going to have a journey for partners. Maybe you have different types of partners, so you have different journeys for different types of partners. So the opportunity to then align the content to the very specific location within any given journey is truly completely customizable and very powerful in making sure that the sales organization speaks the way you want them to speak when you originally created that strategy, okay? So the last piece, and I'll go to the last piece, and I'm going to hand it back to Bob. The last piece is the analytics. So and this ties back to the original theme of the webinar, which is about coaching for performance. So one of the most powerful things about OneSource is not only about creating the content and deploying it there and the collections and the share view and the journey, but it's also about monitoring how the sales organization is deploying it, how many people are using the journeys, how many people are sending out the content or the share views, what type of interaction those particular pieces of sales tools are receiving from the audience. So the options for monitoring and improving the ROI based on metrics and analytics is truly powerful. And then that really ties into the theme of the webinar, which is about ultimately coaching for performance. Because as you look at the metrics, you could say, well, let's talk about how we're using our funnel for the example again of the not-for-profit in the vertical space, and it's not being used appropriately. We need to improve how the sales team is deploying it, as well as deploy additional tools to make them more effective. So tying it all together, it is one seamless process, but as you can see, each one of these parts has its own uniquely powerful feature. And on that, I'm gonna hand this back to Bob and thank you very much. If there'll be some specific questions during the Q&A session, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate that demonstration. So Craig obviously covered a lot of terrain in our conversation today, gave you lots of great examples. And let me just kind of recap what the purpose of OneSource is. It's to drive consistent sales performance across your team. So if you have 3 people, if you have 25 people, the question is, how do you get them all on the same path? So this is beyond CRM, it's beyond marketing automation. It's having a sales-oriented tool that does this. But the one thing that we've also thought about when we created OneSource is this isn't just about sales. It's about the collaborative process that happens when you engage with prospects and customers. So it starts with marketing, goes through sales, includes business development, but also includes client services or customer service. So for instance, we have clients that are using OneSource to actually continue the whole engagement process with their clients, their customers, using OneSource. And that's from the customer service or customer success team. The second thing is making sure that everything is aligned along the buyer's journey, which is AKA the sales process for many of you. But the buyer's journey is really important. The challenge we see with a lot of companies is they take something like a SharePoint and they put a lot of content, a lot of things into SharePoint, and they're aligned based upon this is a video or this is a PDF or this is something else. And that's really not helpful for salespeople. Salespeople need the right tools at the right stage in engagement during the buying and selling process. And that's really what we wanted to do with OneSource, is to make sure that we had that alignment. We also wanted to eliminate any time that was wasted looking for something, trying to find it, especially for the new sales executives that come to your company. Oftentimes, the most difficult process that they have is trying to find, where do I get the information I need so I can be successful? The fourth thing is getting new hires productive immediately. If you give them the tools, if you give them the ability to access those tools and align that based upon the sales steps that they're going to take a prospect through, and you can use that from a coaching perspective as the CEO or the VP of sales or the CMO, it really gives you an opportunity to get them up to speed very quickly. And then finally, synergy across departments. So often we find that companies can become silos, where marketing isn't working well with sales, or sales isn't working well with CS or customer success. Or you've got this group over here that does partners or ecosystem or business development, and they're not really sure how they can utilize what's available within the company. So what OneSource does is it seamlessly brings all this together, allows you to share this information, and most importantly, as a sales team and a management team, it gets you all on the same page. So that tends to be really a fantastic opportunity. So now what we'd like to do, with your permission, is we'd like to open this up for questions. And please don't be shy about asking questions. There is one question I do want to make sure that we address right up front, and maybe for many of you on the tip of your tongue, which is, a question a lot of times is how much does this cost? And that's important. So this is the OneSource overview guide that we'll be happy to send to everybody on today's webinar. But this also is the pricing guide to give you some idea. We wanted this to be very nominal in terms of your investment because we want to see you have breakthrough investment in terms of usage and your sales team being able to benefit. So to start off with, it's $15 per month, up to 5 users. And we're going to be training your organization in the use of OneSource, giving them the tools to be very successful. And then as you grow and you get into a team, and let's say that team is 20 people, we've got an addition for you. And then if you have multiple companies, multiple entities, we've got an enterprise edition for you as well. So again, the objective is to keep the cost nominal. I think what you'll find though is what we find with all of our clients is it's not just used by sales. It's used by marketing. It's used by business development or your partner VP. It's used by management, and it's used by CS or your client services team. So this is really the breadth when you think about OneSource. So let's go ahead and see if we could answer some other questions that you may have today. Don't be shy. Go ahead and post your question, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Okay, here's another question. What's the training and onboarding provided with OneSource? Craig, why don't you go ahead and address that?
Absolutely. So we'll set up a 1-hour session with you, and we do have some training videos on the site that you can walk through to get your content and collections built along with journeys. But provided, we'll also set up a 1-hour session to take you through the fundamental principles and to help you ensure that everything is implemented with success. And it's a very simple system to implement and create users for.
Perfect, thank you. Here's our next question. Next question is, how do I administer the use of OneSource? So what we normally find is there's typically, just as you would with Salesforce or HubSpot as an example, there's typically somebody in your organization that will be working to administer the use of OneSource. There are clients that we work with that don't have that person, and then we provide that as a service. So if you're looking to help update, monitor, control all of the assets that you have for the sales team, from marketing, from sales, for business development, for client services, we're happy to do that too. Here's another question. If I need to create additional sales tools, what are my options? That's a good question. So what we find a lot of times when we sit down with you and we walk through the sales process or the buying process from the buyer's perspective, there are different things that may be missing that you don't have available today for the sales organization. It could be a buyer's guide. It could be an ROI guide. It could be an explainer video. It could be a industry or customer success story, and so forth. So these are all things that we typically help companies address and create. And so we're happy to do that, as we do for all of our clients, help you create that, help you plug in any of the gaps that you have in terms of enabling the sales process that you have for your team with OneSource. So I hope that's helpful in terms of what you have today.
I'll just add this one thing. Sometimes we gloss over it at the very beginning, but On-Demand Advisors, the creator of OneSource, is a full revenue acceleration agency, and we help with strategy as well as execution. So we can help create your funnels. We can help create the individual sales tools that align to the stages in your funnels, and then advise along any part of the marketing to sales process.
Thank you, Craig. So what we'd like to do, and we're really excited about this, is we'd like to offer all of you attending today's webinar a free demonstration as well as a free onboarding to use OneSource for a 90-day free trial. So all you have to do is go to this website, onesource.io, and use the discount code that you see here on the screen, and we'll get you set up with your free trial for 90 days. We want you to be totally comfortable with OneSource, understand its true breakthrough benefits that are available to your sales organization, help you get trained and up to speed, and then start applying some of the sales tools and that you have throughout your buying and selling processes you have today. So please go ahead. If you have any questions, let Craig or I know that. We'll be following up with each of you with an email with this offer, and Dale will be involved in terms of helping us ensure that you get all the information that you need. So with that, what I'd like to do is we'll bring our webinar today to closure. We'd like to thank everybody for attending today's webinar on OneSource and how to achieve peak sales performance. It's been a pleasure having you join us today, and we wish you a truly prosperous and exciting growth year in 2024. So on behalf of Dale, Craig, myself, and our entire On-Demand Advisors team, we wish you a fantastic day, and thank you for joining us.